So on my head, these witches, they put a crown, they give me kingship, but no continuity. That means I have murdered Duncan to make Banquo's son king. Hello everyone and welcome back to Nibble Pop. We are doing Macbeth now and we have already completed the first two acts. Congratulations. As we will be starting with Act 3 today, we will find out that the characters are changing, the situations are changing, and based on these changed circumstances, we will begin to look at a different kind of story that is building up. So up till now, this story has been more or less linear, Macbeth trying to be the king, Macbeth ending up being the king. So what is left now? Why does the story still go on? This is what we are going to find out, that Macbeth was right. Being the king, which he thought was his goal, was not the be-all and end-all. He will have to deal with the consequences, and the way he deals with them, the mistakes which he makes, the errors of judgment which he goes on making, will define how we look at Macbeth by the end of the play. In this video, I'm going to explain to you in a very detailed way every line of the first scene of the third act, and I can promise you that after watching this video, you will need no guidebooks and no study materials to understand what this scene is about. Trust me, every hour you invest on Macbeth is something that Macbeth truly deserves. So stay with me till the end of this video. Don't skip anything at all. And subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so yet. So let's begin the first scene of the third act of Macbeth now. As the scene begins, the audience find Banquo alone on stage. Banquo, who has been the witness of Macbeth's rise to power. Macbeth and Banquo had been together through a lot of things. They have been together in the war. They have been together when the witches greeted them on that blasted heath with their prophecies. They have been friends. And now Banquo is all alone thinking about what has happened to Scotland. The scene is set in Forres, the capital. Macbeth has, of course, shifted his residence from Inverness to Forres now that he is the king. Banquo speaks in a soliloquy. Thou hast it now, king, Cawdor, Glamis, all. So you have it now, everything, all the prophecies have been fulfilled, as the weird women promised. And I fear thou playest most foully for it. I think you haven't got everything in a fair way. You played foul. Yet it was said, it should not stand in thy posterity. Which means that the witches never promised that your children shall be kings. The witches promised that to Banquo. Posterity means descendants, future generation. So Macbeth's descendants, if any, would never get Macbeth's crown. But that myself should be the root and father, the source, the root and father of many kings. So now he is thinking that if the prophecies have been fulfilled for Macbeth, would they not be successful even in his case? If there come truth from them as upon thee, Macbeth, their speeches shine. If their words have become true for you, why? By the verities on thee made good. If these words of the witches have turned out to be true for you, on thee, may they not be my oracles as well? So oracle technically means anybody who makes a prophecy, but there are mythological connotations to it. Oracles usually refer to the Greek oracles. These were sacred people who had this power of prophecy. So now Banquo wishes that these witches be like the oracles, so that their predictions for Banquo also come true. But as we know that whenever he has these thoughts, he tries to set them aside. He doesn't want to ponder on them. And set me up in hope, but hush no more. And then we see Macbeth as king enters. Lady Macbeth also dressed as queen. Lennox, Ross, lords and attendants. Now this Lennox and Ross, they are the king's companions no matter who the king is. They were the king's companion when Duncan was the king, and now they are Macbeth's companion, it seems. That's the rule. If the kings change, often the people of the court, they remain the same. And Macbeth, he refers to Banquo as his chief guest. Here's our chief guest. If he had been forgotten, it had been as a gap in our great feast. So they are planning to have some great party, some great feast. So last time they had a feast, it was quite bloody and dreadful rather. And again, they're going to plan a feast tonight. And Banquo is their chief guest. And whoever their chief guests are, God save them. And all thing unbecoming. So if he had been forgotten, then it would have been a disaster, because he is so special to us. Tonight we hold a solemn supper, sir. We are going to arrange for a very official, serious dinner. And I request your presence. So supper is like a ceremonial banquet here. He's using the humble word supper. Supper is usually a simple meal you take at night. But here it basically means an elaborate banquet. Okay. So he is inviting Banquo for a banquet. And I request your presence. Let your highness command upon me. Look at the tone and the change in tone. Banquo, who had been Macbeth's friend, is now speaking to him as a subordinate. And therefore he is bound to address him not as a friend but as a subject. So he is using these expressions, let your highness command upon me, to the which my duties are with a most indissoluble tie forever knit. So he is again using these formal words and trying to say that I am always loyal to you. So no matter what you command, I will be following them. Then Macbeth asks him a question in a very casual way. Ride you this afternoon? Aye, my good lord. We should have else desired you good advice, which still hath been both grave and prosperous. So if you are riding today, then you're not available for some small talk or advice which I wanted you to give me. So he's trying to actually get some information from Banquo. Let's see how. But we'll take tomorrow. Is it for you, right? So he is asking him, first he asks him a question that, are you going on a horse ride today? And then he is asking, where you're going, how far you're going to go. As far, my lord, as will fill up the time between this and supper. Go not my horse the better, I must become a borrower of the night. Maybe I'll be just a little bit late, but I'll manage to attend your supper. Fail not our feast. So Macbeth says that, okay, you can go for a ride, but do come back. My lord, I will not. And then Macbeth wants to inquire about other things. We hear our bloody cousins are bestowed in England and in Ireland. Cousins here refer to Malcolm and Donalbain. We know, we have seen in scene 3 that Malcolm had planned to go to England and Donalbain to Ireland. And somehow people of Scotland have been convinced by Macbeth that these two sons of the king who have fled the scene must have been the killer of their father, and so they are accused of parricide. Parricide is when somebody kills his father or her father. that act is called parricide. Just like regicide is killing the king, parricide is killing the father. Okay? Side means to murder. Not confessing their cruel parricide, filling their hearers with strange invention, they are trying to tell people strange stories. Of course, they are trying to convince people that Macbeth is the killer. And this, according to Macbeth, are strange inventions. They are just making these stories up. But of that tomorrow. So he doesn't want to discuss Malcolm and Donalbain now with Banquo, because he actually needs some other information which is more important for him. Hie you to horse, adieu, till you return at night. Goes Fleance with you? So, see what kind of information does he actually require? He wants to know whether Banquo is going for a ride, how far he'll be gone, and whether Fleance is going with him or not. Aye, my good lord, our time does call upon us, so we need to really rush off now. I wish your horses swift and sure of foot, and so I do commend you to their backs. Farewell. Let every man be master of his time till 7 at night. So then he dismisses all other people there, saying that you people go and do whatever you want till 7 o'clock, because after that we're going to have this grand banquet. We will keep ourselves till supper time alone. While then, God be with you. And then he speaks to a servant. Everybody else goes off stage, and then he speaks with a servant. Sirrah, a word with you. Attend those men our pleasure. So he is now talking about some men who were waiting for Macbeth all this while. And he goes to meet these men. Let's see who these are. They are, my lord, without the palace gate, which means outside the palace gate. Bring them before us. So the servant goes off and he goes to fetch these men who were wishing to meet Macbeth. And while Macbeth is waiting for these men, he is giving us a beautiful soliloquy. To be thus is nothing, but to be safely thus. I'm a king. Thus means like this. Being like this is great, but only when I'm safe. Our fears in Banquo stick deep. Something is pricking him. He has some problems with Banquo. What problems? Why is he so against Banquo? Let's find out from what he says. In his royalty of nature reigns that which would be feared. There's something in him, something very royal about him. And Macbeth feels inferior. He feels that Banquo is constantly judging him, because he knows that Banquo knows everything, right from the prophecy of the witches. Banquo knows him inside out, and Banquo, who himself is not corrupted, becomes the judge here. It is much he dares. He's a brave guy. And to that dauntless temper of his mind and to that bravery of his mind, he hath a wisdom that doth guide his valor to act in safety. Now, unlike Macbeth, Banquo always thinks a lot before doing something. And he is not guided by his wife or some other forces. He is guided by his conscience. This Macbeth knows. And that is why Banquo always acts playing safe. There is none but he whose being I do fear. So I'm right now scared of Banquo. And under him my genius is rebuked. So I feel inferior. I feel that I am always compared to him, and I fail when I'm compared to him. As it is said, Mark Antony's was by Caesar. Now he refers to Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. They were friends too, but since Julius Caesar was a king, Mark Antony was always under his shadow. It was only after the death of Caesar that Mark Antony rose to power or prominence. In this case, although we might say that Macbeth is the king, so why is Banquo more focused or more, you can say, superior to Macbeth? This is what Macbeth feels. This is something that goes on inside him. Maybe his guilt is working itself out like this. He shed the sisters when first they put the name of king upon me and bade them speak to him. So when he wanted the witches to make some prophecy for him, then what did the witches do? Then prophet-like they hailed him father to a line of kings. Upon my head they placed a fruitless crown and put a barren scepter in my gripe, thence to be wrenched with an unlineal hand, no son of mine succeeding. So on my head, these witches, they put a crown, but they do not give any guarantee of my children continuing to have this royal stature. They give me kingship, but no continuity. So what does he conclude? What has happened actually? If it be so, for Banquo's issue have I filed my mind. For them the gracious Duncan have I murdered. That means I have murdered Duncan to make Banquo's son king. Because my son won't be king. Banquo's son will be king. So he is totally forgetting the fact that he himself has become the king. This is what he had wanted. He never wanted or he never thought about having his children as kings. It never mattered to him till now. It never mattered till he became the king. He should have thought about these things earlier. That if I'm going to murder Duncan, I'm going to be the king according to the witches, but then I won't have any children succeeding me. So I'm killing Duncan to make Banquo's son king. Now this beautiful logic, this exquisite piece of logic was totally absent when he was discussing Duncan's murder with his wife. Now this comes to his mind that I have killed for Banquo's son. Put rancors in the vessel of my peace. So his soul is corrupted, tainted, blackened, just to make Banquo's son happy kings. Only for them, and mine eternal jewel given to the common enemy of man. What is man's eternal jewel? His soul. Who is the common enemy of man? Satan, Lucifer. So Macbeth has handed over his soul, has bargained with Lucifer to make Banquo's children reap the benefits of royalty. To make them kings, the seed of Banquo kings, that is why I've done all this. Rather than so come fate into the list. Now I have to do something about it. So till now he believed that whatever was happening according to the prophecies, and now he believes that he can change prophecies. Suddenly he feels that he's powerful enough and champion me to the utterance. So I want to fight against fate right now. I want to be the champion here. And then a couple of people come on stage and we now realize the true importance of Macbeth's questions to Banquo, why he was riding or where he was riding, with whom he was riding. These two people whom Macbeth had asked to meet him are brought in for a very special purpose. Let's look at what Macbeth is saying to them. Was it not yesterday we spoke together? Which means this is not the first meeting they're having. They have already spoke together. It was so please your highness. Well, then now, have you considered of my speeches? Know that it was he in the times past which held you so under fortune. So he's talking about someone who was responsible for this man's misfortune. So he is talking against somebody. He's trying to provoke this guy against someone. And we are intelligent enough to understand that Macbeth is trying to provoke this man against Banquo, which you thought had been our innocent self. So, you thought I am responsible for your misfortunes, but actually you know who is responsible for your misfortunes. So maybe Macbeth is actually responsible for this guy's misfortunes, but he is using this as an advantage now. He is trying to convince this man that Banquo is an evil person and he should take revenge. As if taking revenge on Banquo is this man's job, is this man's priority, not Macbeth's instruction. This I made good to you in our last conference, passed in probation with you, how you were borne in hand, how crossed the instruments, who wrought with them and all things. So who did things to make situation bad for you? Thus did Banquo. So he names him. You made it known to us. He does not look for any other proof. I did so and went further, which is now our point of second meeting. So why have I called you today? Earlier I had told you that Banquo is responsible for your misfortunes. Something bad has happened and Banquo is responsible. Now second meeting is because of something else. Do you find your patience so predominant? So you think you are so patient, okay, you're so forgiving in your nature that you can let this go? You will just let this go? You won't take any action against Banquo? Are you so gospeled? You're so religious? To pray for this good man and for his issue? Again, he's adding the word for his issue, that is for his son, whose heavy hand hath bowed you to the grave and beggared yours forever, who has been such a reason of your unfortunate circumstance. Will you forgive him? We are men, my liege, so we are not gods. We really can't forget and forgive. We are men. Aye, in the catalogue you go for men. Yes, you're human beings. But that doesn't make you qualified enough. And then he gives a very weird example. As hounds and greyhounds, mongrels, spaniels, curs, sloughs, water rags and demi-wolves are clept all by the name of dogs. So there are different breeds of dogs. One dog being more aggressive than the other. So don't just call yourself or define yourself by the general term man. What kind of man are you? So by and large, he tries to convince them that if they are the right kind of man, they should take revenge, and they definitely think that Macbeth is quite right about it. And then the two murderers, they kind of pledge him that they're going to do something really bad to Banquo, and then Macbeth wants to seal the whole contract kind of thing. Both of you know Banquo was your enemy? True, my lord. So is he mine. And in such bloody distance that every minute of his being thrust against my nearest of life. So every moment he's alive is against me. Now if a king tells this to you, you feel like an instant bond created between you and the king, and that makes it so glamorous. You are helping the king. And it also might mean you will have some benefits in the future, right? And then Macbeth tries to tell them why he can't do anything against Banquo. Because these people are thinking, okay, this is the king's enemy and king is so powerful. So why does the king need our help to kill this guy? And then Macbeth says, though I could with barefaced power sweep him from my sight and bid my will avouch it, yet I must not. For certain friends that are both his and mine. Look, we are political figures, we have some understandings, I can't do this publicly. Whose loves I may not drop, but wail his fall, who I myself struck down. So if he falls, I'll have to cry to convince others that I'm not involved. And thence it is that I to your assistance do make love. So I'm applying to you. So he's appealing to them. Masking the business from the common eye for sundry weighty reasons. There are several serious reasons why I should not do this openly. So you have to be very discreet about it, very secretive about it. Okay. So he tries to make them feel very important. We shall, my lord, perform what your command is. though our lives, somebody, and then Macbeth stops him because he wants to make sure they have understood the instructions clearly. Your spirits shine through you. Very good. Within this hour at most, I will advise you where to plant yourselves. I will tell you where to go, because he knows Banquo's path of ride. He knows where Banquo will be in the next hour. I will advise you where to plant yourselves, acquaint you with the perfect spy on the time, the moment on it, for it must be done tonight. How impatient Macbeth has become. How determined he has become. And something from the palace, always thought, so something from the palace here means that this should be done outside the palace, at some distance from the palace. Always thought that I require a clearness, and with him, I leave no robs nor botches in the work. So, I don't want any proof against me in this, Now, Fleance is also with him, so he will be a witness, so kill him also. Fleance, his son, that keeps him company, whose absence is no less material to me than is his father's, must embrace the fate of that dark hour. So he must also receive the same attack, he should also receive the same kind of death. What does Macbeth actually want? He wants Banquo dead, yes, because Banquo makes him feel inferior. But that is not the main problem here. The main problem is Banquo's son, who is going to get his throne. He feels so. And therefore, he makes sure that these murderers, potential murderers, do not leave Fleance because they have feelings against Banquo, but not Fleance. So maybe they might think that, okay, he's a young guy, let's just spare him. So he makes sure that Fleance must be dead. Resolve yourselves apart, I'll come to your anon. We are resolved, my lord. I'll call upon you straight, abide within. So the murderers, they leave. He is all alone again, and he gives us his rhyming couplet. It is concluded, Banquo, thy soul's flight, if it find heaven, must find it out tonight. So in case of Duncan, he had said, let this be the night when your soul finds heaven or hell. Here he was almost sure that Banquo's soul is definitely going to heaven, and it should go tonight. This scene is so important because it makes us look at a different kind of Macbeth, a determined Macbeth, and a Macbeth who doesn't need any witches anymore, not at least now. A Macbeth who does not need Lady Macbeth anymore, it seems. Lady Macbeth, now dressed as a queen, has become only a mere ornament for him. He is not conferring with her. Killing Banquo is definitely not her plan right now. He is capable of making all these plans all by himself. And it's like he is on a killing spree here. He's not technically a serial killer, because serial killers usually, as psychologists say, they kill because they like the act of killing without actual purpose, just to establish a pattern. Here we see that he is killing for a purpose, and he is trying to justify that purpose. At first it was his desire to be the king. Now it's like his desire to remain the king. And every witness, every person who is ever suspicious of him will face his brunt. and he doesn't need his wife anymore to convince him to do it. We can see that the milk of human kindness is totally dry right now. He has become the instrument of darkness to whom Lady Macbeth made her appeals. Unsex me here. We see that this Macbeth is not the Bellona's bridegroom whom we had seen in the second scene of the first act, being a hero of the nation. This Macbeth is becoming a lone wolf, the sentinel of the murderer himself. And this time he is not even doing the act himself. You know, when somebody murders someone, there's a kind of honesty about it that he is ready to face that man when that man is being killed. But in case of Banquo, he can't even face him and kill him. He is employing contract killers, convincing them with so much lies. He's equivocating all the time. And this Macbeth will fall even further. And if you think that no further fall is possible, then stay with me for the next scenes when we can take you through the lowest points where a soul can reach. The next scene will be another emotionally charged scene where we will have a very, very poignant exchange of dialogue between Macbeth and his wife, and we will see how Macbeth has started to get alienated, isolated, walking towards that everlasting bonfire. So this scene, which shows us the primrose path, Macbeth, the king, sitting on the throne, wearing the crown, also shows Macbeth walking down the steps of hell. Wait for me till my next class when I'll take you through the second scene of this act. Till then, watch and rewatch this video and the previous videos of this series if you have missed any. Write in the comments anything that comes to your mind regarding this scene, regarding any other scene in Macbeth. Thank you for being with me through this series. We have really come a long way together. Thank you for all your love. Lots of blessings from me. This is Monami Mukherjee. You were watching Nibble Pop.